All right, so my name is Antti Petäjistö. I'm at the New York University. I've actually also been on faculty at Yale University. So in fact, if you've seen this study before, then my name, 6 months ago I moved to NYU. So I would still, that paper actually still lists my affiliation as Yale. So I'm going to be talking to you today about active management. I'm going to be talking about specifically two things. First of all, how we should quantify active management. And secondly, how active management is related to fund performance. So as I said, this research is based on this paper that has this title. The paper actually has been around for some years. It was officially published at the end of last year. As in academia, basically when you write a paper, it takes, if you're lucky, it takes you about 3 years to get it through a journal. So in my case also, the paper, despite having been very well received both in academia and by practitioners, it's a long process. And in fact, in that paper, data, and also in the handout that you have, that actually is based on data from 1980 to 2003. So that data, recently, a lot of people have been asking me to update that data. They've been asking me what the status of active managers have been in the last 6 years. So right now, I've been working pretty hard to update that data to give you a picture of, if anything has changed in the last 6 years, and including the latest history, what things look like for active managers, and especially how things worked out during the financial crisis, which I'm sure is on top of everyone's minds. So today, what I'm going to do is the handouts that you have, they are based on the numbers in the paper. And by the way, if you want any details on that, what you should do is you should go to my website, just Google my name. That's going to take you to my website, and there you'll find a link to that paper. So that's going to give you all kinds of more details than you ever want to know about the study, how it was conducted. But of course, obviously, I'm here now, so definitely, if you have any questions, I welcome any questions that you have during the presentation or after the presentation. But having said that, I wanted to give you, really the latest picture of what's been going on the last couple of years, as well as back in the 90s. So these numbers that I'm going to show you today are really based on the latest data up to the end of last year. So that's the reason they're going to be the numbers are going to be a little bit different from what you have in the handouts. But the basic story hasn't really changed. Still the data kind of supports the same conclusions that we drew some years ago. All right, and this was also the paper, by the way, is kind of joint work with Martin Kremers, who's my Dutch co-author, whom I know from Yale University. So you may have seen him here as well. Okay, so first now, if we think about active management, if we want to understand what active management really means, let's think about a standard long-only portfolio, typical mutual fund that has a benchmark index. So if we then kind of want to understand the active management of that fund, what we can do is we can decompose that portfolio into two components. We could decompose it into the passive benchmark index plus any deviations from that index. So in some stocks, the fund is going to be overweight relative to the benchmark index. In those stocks, the fund has effectively an active long position. In other stocks, the fund is going to be underweight relative to the index. So in those stocks, the fund has an active short position. Okay. So that's kind of what the decomposition that we're doing here. So just to give you an example, if we take the biggest mutual fund in the US, that was at the end of last year, it was a Growth Fund of America with over $100 billion in assets. If you invested $100 in the Growth Fund of America, that would be the same thing as investing $100 in the S&P 500, which was the benchmark index for that fund, and $54 in the active long positions of the fund, and $54 in the active short positions of the fund. So again, we're kind of, you can really kind of separate into these two components, the index plus this kind of long-short active portfolio on top of that. So then, how should we quantify active management? Well, a very simple measure, an intuitive measure of active management is the size of this active long-short portfolio that you're kind of adding relative to the index. So in this case, it would be 54% for this particular fund. And this is what we label the active share of the fund In other words, that percentage of the portfolio that's different from the benchmark index. A little bit more formally, we can define active share, or we can compute it by taking the weight that a fund has in a particular stock minus the weight that the index has on a particular stock. So we take the difference in weights, stock by stock. We take the absolute value, sum up across all the stocks, and divide that by 2. So that's kind of another way to compute it. And in this particular case that I just showed you, Growth Fund of America, for example, would get an active share of 54%. Okay. So more generally, this is a number that's always going to be between 0 and 100% for long-only mutual funds. So in that sense, it's a very simple number to interpret.